Hello, welcome back. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to be redoing this video on sort of how the AT wrecked my health. I'm back in Canada now from Cuba. We were just down there for a bit, resting and relaxation because the body needed to heal, and it was just a great place to sit in the sun and do nothing and have people cook for me because it was an all-inclusive, which was the plan. But I did a video down there talking about how the AT wrecked my health, and there was a lot of wind. We kind of hit some stormy days there, and everyone was at the pool, so there was a lot of audio. I was hoping it wouldn't be too bad, but a lot of people were having some difficulty with it, and I did want to make sure this information got out to you because I think it's important. I don't think it's talked a lot about. So I thought I'd redo it for you, and you can watch either one. They're pretty much going to contain the same information, except this one will just have clearer audio and a very boring background. No palm trees back here, which is sad. I wish we had palm trees in Canada, but not natively grown anyway. So that being said, I'm going to talk about how the AT wrecked my health. So it's, it's not clickbait per se, but there's a lot about the AT that was beneficial for my health and that was not beneficial for my health. So I want to kind of go over those. Now, this is my own personal experience. Obviously, I did this SOBO. We started in June and we ended in November. I turned 50 over the trip, which is why I took the trip, was to kind of reset my health. So, that places me in sort of a perimenopausal woman category. Now, that's specific to me, but this information, can carry over. There's a fair bit of general information, but just keep that in mind that this is my experience. I am not a big muscular woman. I don't gain muscle very easily, so that also had an effect as my personal body composition as to how, this kind of played out. But take that information as you will, and I will share my experience with you. So, first of all, before starting the trip, I did some pre-training for about 5 months prior. I knew I had some muscle imbalances because I had done some shakedown hikes here in New Brunswick, Canada. We have the Bay of Fundy, which is about a 60 kilometer hike, which has a lot of up and down. It's pretty steep and intense, so it was a great training ground for the AT because, as we know, that's all you do in the AT is go up and down. I really experienced that. That being said, I did notice on those shakedown hikes I had a lot of knee pain, a lot of IT band pain, so the outer part of your thigh and the knee. So when you're going downhill, you notice that pain is really intense, and you don't want to flex your knee to a certain point because it really hurts. And a lot of people, I did notice, at least in the start, a lot of people got off because of that. They thought they were young enough, they thought they were healthy enough and didn't have any imbalances, and suddenly that reared its head. And I don't know if you can out-train it on the hike. Maybe you can. I think maybe if you're younger, you probably have a greater potential to. I didn't think I could, so I trained before, and I must say it worked. I did have some pain afterwards, but that was just from overuse because your body's just not used to hiking so many miles every day, all day. And although we did start off with some smaller miles, probably about anywhere from 8 to 12 was the average for the first little bit, and then we ramped up. Although we had a few big days in there off the start, not intentionally, but that's just how it worked out. But I did find that when I used some KT tape to support it, it worked out fine. But I didn't have any knee pain that prevented me from continuing. So I will link down below the training plan that I used. Like I said, I went to a physiotherapist and I got something specific for my needs. It might not be the same for you. Now, that being said, it also took me about a month and a half to get my trail legs. Some people say it takes a month. Some people say it takes a couple of weeks. It all depends on how quickly you build muscle, where you're starting from, your age, all of those factors. So for me, it took me about a month and a half before I got those trail legs really going, before I could really amp up those miles. But in order to get trail legs, you have to have a few things in place. One, obviously, your ability to grow muscle. Your nutrition has to be in there. you know, those things help. They don't prevent, but they help. So I'm going to talk about nutrition first, because that it was the one thing I noticed very early on. Now, obviously, with backpacking, you're trying to choose the lightest weight food, so, and the easiest to carry, a lot of dehydrated stuff, ramen noodles, packs like that. So you're missing a lot of vitamins and minerals in that kind of food. It's high salt content, which you're going to sweat out. So the salt content, I didn't even factor that in. It didn't really bother me at all, and it probably shouldn't do unless you've got some really high blood pressure. Then that might be an issue, but I think for the most of us it probably doesn't factor in, because we're going to sweat it off anyway, or hopefully you'll drink enough water and flush it out through your kidneys. But the minerals and vitamins are definitely something that you lack. So I definitely would recommend taking a multivitamin, and I did have one. But what I didn't expect were some of the other vitamins that I needed. And I noticed pretty early on, actually, probably starting in the 100 mile, that I was lacking some calcium and magnesium because I was getting muscle cramps, restless legs, kind of some tingly toes and whatnot that weren't due to temperature related. So I was noticing that, and I was craving certain foods. Now, obviously, when you eliminate foods out of your diet, because, like vegetables and fruit, because of the weight, you're probably going to crave them anyway, but I always try to listen to my cravings, and I was really craving like orange juice, so I think I was deficient in vitamin C. Again, you don't get that in ramen noodles. Like, you can supplement ways to do it, but I ate a lot of those Welch's little gummy candies, because there's lots of sugar in them, and they have vitamin C, oddly enough. So I ate a lot of those gummy candies, and they were really good. But I would also, when we took town breaks, I would buy one of those big jugs of orange juice with the calcium added into it, and I would drink the whole thing. There's a lot of calories in there. There's a lot of sugar in there. I wouldn't recommend that on a regular basis if you're not through hiking, but I did it, and it was great. And I did later on supplement with more calcium and magnesium, and I found the cramps definitely went away. The nerve pain, that is something I'm going to touch on in a little bit, but because that's kind of a different thing. But with those vitamin deficiencies as well, one thing you have to be careful of are your electrolytes. Definitely, I think, required on an AT hike, especially when it's hot out and you're sweating a lot. Your body needs those salts for nerve transmission, for muscle incorporation, so you really do need to have electrolytes. I didn't find a lot of great ones on the trail. I was kind of saddened about that. I think I used one from Walmart. I don't remember what it was called. I liked the taste of it, really. It was kind of it. I mean, there's lots of different kinds out there, but I didn't really love them. So that was a shame, but I definitely always had electrolytes on me. Always at least had one electrolyte a drink a day, probably two when it's got really hot out. And I always made sure I drank at least some during the rainy, because it rained for the whole first 2 months, and you don't really want to drink a lot of water when you're wet head to toe. You figure it just kind of absorbs through your skin. It doesn't. So you do still need to drink, because you are still sweating. So you definitely need to keep your salts up, and I had my electrolyte drinks certainly during the rainy time as well. Now, surprisingly, I did not get sick at all. I mean, exercise does increase your immunity, so that's a bonus. Some people did get sick. I didn't find too many people got sick. It was more a lot of injuries and infections that happened, and that's something you have to be careful of. Now, because it rained so much last year, I think they had this with their 35-year record for rain level for June and July in Maine and New Hampshire. So yay! And our feet were pretty much soaked constantly for the first 2 months. The only time they dried out is when we took 0 days. And we took a fair number of 0 days just because mentally you need to not be in the rain and you want to be dry. And just because you got so sick and tired of being wet and cold, it sucked. You really got to embrace the suck there. But some people who would get blisters and wouldn't take care of them very well might increase to a staph infection or a fungal infection, because your feet are always sopping wet and gross and they stink. I didn't get that because I early on after the 100 mile, I picked up a new pair of camp shoes, the zero drop shoes. So I made sure every night that I took my shoes and socks off and dried my feet out really well, cleaned them so that they didn't get any weird funky infection. Because we have staph on our skin. It's just part of everybody's normal bacteria on their skin. And sometimes some people have more than others. I'm one of those people. So whenever I get a scrape, chances are likely it's going to get infected. So you got to be really careful about cleaning those things so they don't increase into, some problems where you have to get antibiotics. I know a few hikers who did have that issues. And because being a nurse, they would come to me and ask me, and I'd be like, no, you need to go get that checked out or keep it cleaner, and I would give them some stuff to take care of it. Usually something like a Neosporin and alcohol wipes will be just fine for those types of things. You just have to stay on top of it and keep it clean and dry. But, if your nutrition level is very low, it's hard for your body to fight those off. So, extra vitamin C is great for that. It also helps with inflammation in the knees because, well, we all take, vitamin I, ibuprofen, and I did take that on occasion too because it just, sometimes you need what they call the hiker heroin, which is essentially you take Advil and ibuprofen and acetaminophen, Tylenol and Advil at the same time. And yes, it can be done. They're processed through different things. Not medical advice, but that's what I did. And let me tell you, we'll fall asleep very quickly on that. That being said, I did find that, again, when you went into town, for people who were sort of craving foods and wanted to bump up your nutrition levels, they would consume a lot of calories. So you would get your vegetables and your fruit on your town days, and then they would eat very little on their hiking days. And that worked for some people. It did not work for me. I can't eat that much in one sitting. I eat all day, but I can't eat that much in one sitting. So taking those extra supplements was really important for me. So I would take, later on I figured out I needed not only the multivitamin, but a calcium and a magnesium supplement as well. Some people might need even an iron one if they're not getting enough of that. I have good iron stores. Like I said, I took or maybe I didn't say, I did blood work prior to going on the trip because I was curious to see where my blood work would be because I was planning to take blood work after. So I would, I'll compare it later on at the very end. I'll kind of go over some of the things I expected to see happen and some of the stuff I didn't expect to see happen with my blood work, which was quite surprising, but I'll talk about that later. Anyway, so you go into town, you eat all your fruits and veggies and then whatnot, but that didn't work for me. That might work for some people, not for me. Okay, and moving on. So the next one is obviously your muscles. Your muscles are being built and broken down at the same time as you're hiking. If you're not getting enough protein, which I mean, there's so many protein bars and protein supplements. I took protein powder and added it to my oatmeal every morning, which also had some vitamins to try to keep my protein up. So I don't think it was too bad in being protein deficient. There are lots of ways you can get it through nuts. Lots of people like that. Nuts are heavy, but they're great sources of fats. And like walnuts, a lot of people like peanuts because they're super cheap. And they have extra salt and people like that. So, whatever works for you. There's lots of protein bars, the tuna packets and whatnot. But I found like protein bars, they're so overprocessed and some of them just taste awful. There weren't some bad ones out there. I'm going to give you that. But I did get sick of them pretty fast, as well as the tuna packets. So it was really hard to get good nutrition just because you got so sick of the food. And some people, that's not a problem. They are creatures of habit and they will eat the same thing every day, all day. And I thought I was one of those people. Turns out I'm really not. If it's food I really like, yes. But it's hard to really love a Mountain House meal or ramen noodles with packets of tuna again and again. For me. If you love it, awesome. You'll probably do just fine. I was not one of those people. But you definitely do need to make sure you're getting enough protein to build your muscles. Otherwise, your body's just going to cannibalize itself to keep that energy going to get you through the hike. And because of that, and because it's hard to get all those calories in, you will lose weight. Now, the amount of weight you'll lose is variable. Like Jeff lost 30 pounds, I lost 8. So huge difference. And I'm like very tiny compared to him, like 5'3", 120 pounds, and he was 6'2" and 200 pounds. So, you know, huge variation. I honestly think I was eating more food than him, because I can, like I said, I eat all day, and I will, literally. I had my snack bag. I was eating all day long. He tended to eat just big meals at one time. But everyone, you know, loses weight differently. I did find if you had the weight to lose, you were probably going to lose it. Women tended to reconfigure the weight differently, so their body composition would change more than men. Men just kind of leaned out and looked like they belonged in a concentration camp. Like, they literally were so thin. A lot of the men I found, you could see their abs pretty quickly. Women didn't seem to lose it like that. Now, I certainly didn't, but again, stress levels, cortisol levels in your body will ensure that you, just the way that we're made, will hold on to a lot of weight because it wants to prepare for babies, even though you're nowhere near having babies, or at the end of that cycle to not even be able to, but still the body weight or the body will want to hold on to that. So I held on to mine pretty tightly. I did grow some muscles and my body changed and kind of leaned out a bit, but I didn't lose what I thought I was going to lose. And maybe that was because we got the van and my nutrition improved and I could get extra calories, and maybe I indulged more than I thought I did. Either way, it doesn't really matter, but your body will change differently probably than you expect it to, unless you're a guy and then you're just going to lean right out. Because I did notice that right when we were in southern Maine, there was a young woman, and we were asking questions, and maybe it was inappropriate to ask how much weight she lost because she was near the end of her trip, and she said she really didn't. She was a young woman, but she did notice she had a lot of muscle because she threw around her pack like it was nothing, and she had a big bear canister in it, so her pack was heavy. I mean, I started off with a 27-pound pack and ended up with about a 20-pound pack. So my weight changed in my pack a lot and what I carried, and maybe that had something to do with the calories I burnt off, because a few of the other women I started with, they leaned out really heavily at the end of it. They were quite skinny. They definitely need to add back a lot of calories. They could each use at least 10-15 pounds back. But, you know, so everybody's different. The one thing I did notice, now I gained a lot of muscle in the lower half of my body, so all those great hiking muscles, but if I'm not hiking, I lost muscles. Like, for those activities that you don't need those muscles for, I don't have that strength anymore. So this is where the parts that kind of wrecked me. I have no upper body strength anymore. We went back to the gym shortly after we got back, and wow, I can't bicep curl, bench press, any of that, about half of what I could before. So I did lose a lot of the upper body muscle mass and any of the lower body that wasn't specific to hiking. So I can hike like a mad woman now. I can go up those mountains. My cardiovascular improved immensely, hugely. I can definitely, you know, go a lot more miles, a lot faster. I tested this on the treadmill. I went at a speed where it normally would have been running. I was still walking, so I bumped it up. I went faster. I increased the incline. No problems. Didn't get winded at all. So that surprised me quite a bit. What also surprised me with that is I increased my vasculature. Now, if you don't know what that is, it's just your blood vessels, the ability for your body to carry blood throughout your body, which is your oxygen levels. So I have mentioned in previous videos that I have Raynaud's, so I have very reactive small blood vessels in my fingers and toes, the peripheries. And it also means that I don't have hair on my legs because there just wasn't enough blood flow going to create hair on my legs. And that's not a new thing for me. It might be something if you have Raynaud's that you don't have, but I definitely do. It's just I have very small blood vessels. That being said, when I started hiking, I increased my vasculature tremendously. And now I have hair on my legs, which is, I'm so happy. It's extra warmth for me. I'm pretty pleased about it. Some people might not be so pleased about hair on their legs, but I am. So that was a huge surprise. So big bonus, it does increase, your vasculature. So I didn't expect that. I did expect to lose the muscle mass in the top of my body. So that I'm going to have to rebuild, which I'm kind of sad about because I'm a slow muscle builder. Even in my legs, like all that hiking, I expected to have some definition. I have none. It leaned out a bit, but there's no muscle definition. I didn't gain. I saw some people, I believe there's a famous hiker last year. His name was Quadzilla. He did all three, the Triple Crown, in 1 year, which is insane. So, of course, he's going to have big legs, but he had big legs, hence the name Quadzilla. And, impressive. And even some of the other women and men, you could definitely see some muscle growth there. Mine, no, I just look like I have little sticks still. A little disappointed in that, but that's okay. They're a lot stronger than they were for hiking. Now, as well with the hiking and the strengthening is the bone building. Now, as a small, tiny woman in her 50s now, osteoporosis is something I've always thought about, so your bone health. Now, when you put your bones under stress, which is what hiking is, you're putting weight on your back and you're hiking up hills. It's going to put stress on your bones. Theoretically, you should be building your bone. But you can only build bone if you've got the materials available. Now, stress also will leach calcium from your bones so that your body can reduce its cortisol levels. So it's a fine balance. But the idea is to build your bones. And that was part of my intent because I've always been concerned about osteoporosis, being a very tiny woman and having really tiny bones. That's just my bone structure. And so I was concerned about that. That being said, I think I did all right. I didn't break any bones despite falling a lot. And, you all saw me smash my head. I didn't break anything there. I fell a few times on slippery rocks and, certainly hurt the shoulders and the knees, but I didn't break anything. And some people did break things, so I'm pretty happy that none of my falls led to a break and that my bones were strong enough to hold up against a break. So I think I did okay there, but certainly that's one of the other issues, that if you're depleted in calcium, you might actually be doing the reverse of what you thought you were doing. So to be careful about that. Now, the next issue that I found was nerve damage. And this is one I didn't actually hear much about prior to going, was that first of all, having the right shoes makes a huge difference. I started off with a pair of Hokas. They were a little tight in the toe box. I didn't think they were, but between getting the feet wet all the time and the shoes were always wet, and your feet swelling, because when you start walking, your body's just not used to it. And I found my feet would swell a lot. So my feet were way bigger than I thought they were going to be in my shoes, and my shoes weren't big enough. So my toes would started to poke out the edges, and I actually broke the seams on them, which is why I got rid of them earlier than later. Same with the second pair. I thought I had a nice wide toe box and I could pull it off. That didn't happen. By the third pair, I had the topos that I had an extra wide toe box and I had to size up at that point more than I thought I did. So by the third pair, I had a good pair of shoes. But by that point, I had compressed my feet, as well as the swelling compressed my feet, the nerves against the bones, and just, maybe they didn't get enough blood flow, or I don't know exactly what caused the nerve damage, but I ended up with numb toes. Not all of them, and not all of the toe. So just sections of my feet are now numb. And that's actually pretty common. A lot of people end up with numb toes. Some of them will call them cotton toes. And it's a weird sensation. Now, some of them I've gotten some of the feeling and the sensation back. Some of them I don't. I have talked to a few people who have had numb toes, and for them, some of them have lasted a year or so. Now, if you have a B12 deficiency, that could be caused by a different reason, and you might want to get that checked out. I mentioned before I had my blood done vitamin B12 was not an issue for me. So that's not the reason I have nerve damage. It's mostly just due to overuse, compression, probably something to do with my own, physiological vasculature in my feet. So everyone's going to be different. But so I didn't expect to have nerve damage. So that was a big surprise. And I'm going to assume it's going to come back. Nerves grow regain their growth very slowly. So that's not something I expect to happen quickly. You can certainly improve that with more blood flow, massages, that type of thing. So, there are ways to help increase that feeling return, but, it may not. It's hard to say. Another unexpected way that the AT kind of changed my health, and I'm hoping it'll come back, is my flexibility. I've always been a flexible person. To be fair, I did not do the amount of yoga I thought I was going to do on the trail. I had full plans on doing this whole yoga routine at the end and the beginning, and that didn't happen. I did small bits of it out of necessity, because you really kind of have to, otherwise you just feel like a little solid mass in the morning. So I did do some stretching, but I found that my ankles, or anytime as soon as you sit down after hiking, you seize up and you feel like a little weeble wobble man person when you get up, just because your whole body has stiffened. It takes a little bit to get moving, and especially the ankles. And I still find that the ankles now, I mean, it's been, I guess, a little over a month, about a month and a half now since we stopped hiking on a daily basis, but I do find the ankles are still stiff in the morning. I'm increasing that now by doing a much more regular yoga practice, as I had been doing prior to hiking. I do recommend doing some stretching while you hike. It greatly improve your ability not to get injured, and just to kind of keep that stiffness at bay, and elevating your feet at night for those swelly toes, because it's gonna happen. Finally, the other way that the AT changed my health unexpectedly was my bowel habits. Early on, I had mentioned in one of my fear videos that I was scared I might poop my pants, because that was one of the rumors out there, and a lot of people did have emergency evacuations. I did not end up needing one of those, but the amount of exercise that you do does change your bowel habits. The way that you use the toilet will change your bowel habits. If you're doing kind of a squatty in the woods, that is going to change your bowel habits. Maybe not permanently, but it definitely will. And I have found that out. It's and the food that you eat and how you eat, all these things are going to change your habits out there when you're hiking. And then when you come back, it takes a bit of time for your body to go, oh, okay, we're doing things differently again. So just do expect that, maybe when you come back, you might be constipated and you had never been before. Maybe your body likes the squatty potty because you were used to doing it in the woods. Just things to think about. I hadn't anticipated that, but that was definitely one of the things that came along with the trail. So who knew? Right, so that pretty much covers how the AT wrecked my health. Not officially wrecked it, but definitely changed it in ways I hadn't anticipated. Now, I had mentioned quite briefly, I had a blood test done early on. My bloods were great. I didn't have any issues there. But on coming back, I had my blood redone, and a few things I did notice is, big surprise, deficient in calcium. So I definitely have to up that. I thought I was upping it, but I still obviously have not upped it enough, so I have to increase that much more intensely. Now, all of my triglycerides, my cholesterol type blood values were okay, but the overall cholesterol had increased, and that actually shocked me. I didn't expect that to happen, and I think part of that would be due to the fact that the type of food I was eating was quite different. I ate a lot more fast food just because it was convenient. I ate a lot more burgers and stuff that I don't normally eat. It's not that I don't eat meat or red meat. It's just I don't normally eat a lot of fast food burgers because I'm not around them, and I like the food healthy food, the food that I cook. So I don't tend to go out for that food a lot, but because we didn't have a home or a kitchen, we ended up eating a lot more of that because it was convenient, it was fast, it was cheap. So, and just the types of snacks that we would eat, you pretty much on trail, you're going to eat whatever you want. And so I did. So my cholesterol level actually increased, and I'm a little sad about that because I had, like, my triglycerides and my LDL and HDL like individually are fine, but overall, like, the calculated amount is different. So like I said, I'm a little saddened at that. My iron levels were still great, B12, all those things were fine, but yeah. So, you know, that was a change I actually hadn't expected. The calcium one, I was really hoping kind of wouldn't. I thought I had that under control. But even, you know, someone who knows what they're doing, or who thinks she knows what she's doing, you know, is in the healthcare profession and had supplemented, still didn't pull that one off enough. So I'm definitely going to have to fix the calcium deficiency. But, you know, those are things you should think about. And sort of, if you're planning your trip for the next year, might want to consider just looking at your own health and planning those things to occur, or try to find ways to mitigate it. So if you found this valuable, give it a like and do subscribe, and I will be still putting out a few more videos. And for those who had difficulty in the last one, I apologize. I hope this helps with the audio, and that you don't have to suffer hearing party sounds in the background and the wind blowing my camera over. So thank you for watching.